To introduce our speaker today is Shantini Baskarian. Shantini grew up with a deep love for God and world missions. She is a clinical psychologist by training and up until recently a homeschool mom in practice. She now works with Trinity International University as an assistant clinical professor, teaching exclusively in Trinity's Extension Center in the Fox Lake Prison, helping prisoners to get their undergraduate degrees. She is also part of the teaching team at her home church and loves discipling small groups of women at church and in prison and through teaching opportunities at home and around the world. She is the happiest sitting out in her garden on a warm day with a good book, having dozens of people over for dinner, or having God conversations over a cup of coffee. She is married to her husband Vinod for 32 years, and they are empty nesters with 2 grown sons, 2 daughters-in-law, and a daughter in college. Let's welcome Shantini.
Hey, I moved here from India, 30, no, I don't do math well, so it was 1995, so it was 28 years ago-ish, okay. And so when I came here, we arrived in the middle of winter, December 21st, actually. And December 21st, 95, I had a little 1-year-old, my oldest was 1-year-old. I had left everything in India, and I'll talk about that later. But December 21st, the winter of 95, 96 was one of the coldest winters we've had here, and one of the snowiest. There were t-shirts when we actually had those Wisconsin stores. There were t-shirts that said, "I survived the winter of 95, 96. And I wish I had bought those t-shirts because that, it was like, ah. And a friend of mine took me to MOPS. And I have to tell you, in the midst of what was the most, I think, depressing season of my life, this community was so life-giving for me. Just that I could come together, there were people like me, people in the same, spaces as I was. In those days, we used to do a little craft with MOPS, and I was like, I was doing something creative with my life besides changing diapers, and it was just like so life-giving. So this is such a joy to circle back and to be in this space with you guys. So thank you for having me. I put an asterisk on your handout, and I just want you to know that I forgot to put why that asterisk was there. And it's because much of your handout is a worksheet from a book called Yes Brain, The Yes Brain by Dan Siegel and Tina Bryson. So if you just know that it's from there, and a lot of the work that you'll be doing is from that book. A lot of what we'll be talking is from that book too. So, how many of you like change? You like, that's great. You like change too. You too. Yeah. I love change. I am constantly, I always tell, our house only gets cleaned for 2 reasons. When I've changed out the furniture, or when we get guests. Well, there's one room when you enter our house, there's a little room off the living room. And that little room has been, it started off as a nursery for our daughter, and then it became a guest room. And then it transformed into an exercise room. And then it transformed into my daughter's princess bedroom, complete with castle walls and everything. And then it became our homeschool room, and then it changed around a couple of years and became a library, and then it's right now my husband's office. We've changed. I love changing things around. I love changing furniture. I don't like to be stuck in a certain space. I love doing things differently. I'm not a routine person. I love projects. I love all of those things. But I love change when I'm in control of it. When I'm not in control of it, then I really struggle. Okay, and so today your theme is saying yes. And I think one of the things that I love about that theme is you start off with the first thing about saying yes is being present, being fully present wherever you are. But there are so many ways to say yes, right? There's the people-pleasing yes, that where you agree to everything that everybody brings onto you, and then pretty soon you're just overwhelmed and you wonder like, why did I agree to this? I don't know what's going on in my brain. Then there's the reluctant yes. The yes that you say because you'll feel guilty if you don't say yes. When my husband's job moved us over here, initially I had a very joyful yes. I was like, I had just finished my college education, I'd submitted my thesis. This was a fun way to go see the world. The whole plan was we'd come here for 10 months and then we'd go back, and it was just like, yay, this would be good. We'd come here, enjoy the season in our life, go back and pick up where we had left behind. But that was not what happened. 1 year extended into another year, until I was super frustrated. Because I had said yes to an adventure, but I didn't expect this yes to go on and on and on. I did not say yes to leaving family for the rest of my life. I did not say yes to leaving friends in India. I didn't say yes to being here in the cold of winter. And I definitely didn't say yes to being a stay-at-home mom. There were so many things in my life that said, this is not what I said yes to. So my yes, this is how I function, turned into a grumble. Okay, and I've talked about this book called The Yes Brain. They say we have a yes brain and a no brain. And it's not like it's, two different brains, but it's kind of like a posture. It's how you posture up yourself determines your growth in resilience. Okay, and so Dan Siegel will actually use his hand as an example, and some of you have already seen this, where this is your lower brain, this is your limbic system, and this is your frontal cortex, right? And when you say no, when there's a no posture, you tend to respond, you tend to react out of your lower brain. But when there's a posture of yes, you tend to react more out of your frontal cortex. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're going to do a little exercise, and again, this is an exercise that Dan Siegel does. And what you're going to do is, I want you to close your eyes. And I want you to breathe, take a deep breath, and release. And I want you to really be aware of your body. Like what's going on in the inside. Can you sense your heartbeat? Can you feel like, what's going on inside? Maybe your tummy is grumbling. Maybe your, whatever it is, just sense what's going on in your body. Be fully aware, be fully present to yourself. And now I'm going to repeat a word 7 times. And as I repeat that word, I want you to be aware of how your body responds. Okay? And my word is no. 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 Open your eyes. How did it feel? What did it do to your body? How did you feel your body respond when I said no?
It tensed up.
It tensed up. Yeah, you felt the tension. What else?
My stomach tightened.
Your stomach tightened. What else?
Kind of drooped down a little bit. I felt like I wasn't sitting up
Yeah?
inside anymore.
Just gonna
Like something to myself.
something to yourself, withdrew a little bit. Anything else?
My eye twitched when you said it really strong.
Yeah. It just kind of felt like something was triggering, right? Yeah? Any other reactions?
I think my heart rate went up a little bit.
Just a little bit, yeah.
wasn't like breathing steadily.
You,
I was like,
exactly, and it's strange, isn't it? Because you're in a safe place. You know that, there's no threat at all, but your brain reacts to no in a way that shuts down, right? That withdraws, that tenses up. The fight or flight response kicks in, and you're in alert, right? Okay, so let's do it again. And I just want you to close your eyes, and I'll say another word 7 times. Be aware of your breathing, be aware of where you're at. So yes. 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 All right, open your eyes. How did that feel?
A little jump of excitement.
A little excitement.
I smiled.
You smile.
lighter.
Lighter. What else? How else would you have? How else would you sense your body responding? Those who felt heartbeats go up and all of that, did you feel a little calm? So I just want you to hold that, because the yes part of your brain is the social integration part of the brain. It's not saying yes to everything. It's not people pleasing, but it's becoming your authentic self. It's understanding your emotions and being receptive, being aware, being open, holding on to being creative. The yes brain, if those of you who have heard about like the growth mindset or grit or resilience, all of those things are from this yes brain posture of receptivity, right? So the yes brain is flexible, it's curious, it's resilient, it's willing to try new things, and even risk making mistakes. Okay, it's not that it never makes mistakes. It's open to the world, it's open to relationship. It helps us to relate to others, and it helps us understand ourselves. It prioritizes our inner world. So when you're with your child, for example, when you, I'll give you this, I babysit for a friend of mine every now and then. And she has attachment issues, and so that reflects on the way she parents, and so her children are very clingy. And so there was this one time she dropped off her children with me, and this little, her youngest has never been left with anyone else, and so, because she would scream if she's left by herself. And so I picked up this little girl, and I was able to be a calm presence in her life at that time, because I was able to come at her from a receptive, open, yes brain posture. My identity, my parenting was not in question. I did not feel like I was in this place where I had to prove anything. So I was just this calm presence, and as I held this child, and she just realized that no one was reacting, no one was getting upset, but there was just a calmness. She herself calmed down, very quickly calmed down. And when her mom came back, she was like, I've never seen her respond like that to anyone. The reason was I was able to come in with an open, calm awareness of her. I was able to meet her needs, but I was not reactive. Which very often when our kids get into that space of anxiety or crying or tantrums, we become reactive rather than calm, because we ourselves are responding out of our no brain rather than our yes brain, okay? So the no brain is reactive, it's fearful, it's rigid, it shuts down. It's worrying that it might make a mistake. It sticks to rules. This is the way you should do it, and if you don't do it, this one will happen to you. It sticks to the status quo. It becomes good at pleasing others. There's the shaming that comes along with the no brain. It stops being curious and then stops having joy. So here's how I understand it. I'm going to do two things. I'm going to give you an example from the Bible, and I'm also going to give, because I grew up with Bible stories, so I'm going to give you an example from the Bible, and then I'm going to give you an example from my life, okay? So, the example from the Bible, and I'll tell you in a little bit why I chose this example. The example from the Bible is from the book of Exodus, okay? And the book of Exodus talks about the people of Israel. They had been in slavery for 400 years, okay? Slavery had shaped them as a community. Now, if you think of how in our day and age, we're like, okay, the boomers, you have a list of things what the boomers are. You have a list of what the Gen X people are like. You have a list of what the millennials are. And some of you are millennials are like, I am nothing like a millennial. But there's a list. And then there's a list of what the Gen Z people is like, okay? What is curious about each of these lists is that these lists were made because there were things in the environment that shaped them. The boomers these had certain characteristics because they were the generation that came out of, that was born soon after, in the years after the wars, right? The Gen Z, they're the generation that dealt with the pandemic. They were born in the aftermath of 9/11 and now the pandemic. We're going to see how they grow as a generation. It's going to be interesting because they are going to have certain characteristics. And the people of Israel for 400 years had been under slavery. This generation had characteristics that had shaped them, okay? They were oppressed. And because they were oppressed, they learned the rules and they knew what happened when those rules were broken. I teach in prison, and the men whom I teach, they know the rules and they're constantly scanning for the rules. So when I go into class, they constantly want to know what I expect. What is the rule? What is the boundaries? Because success for them in prison is dependent on whether they follow the rules or not. And so for these people of Israel, following the rules as slaves was very important. So God calls Moses and says, I'm going to rescue my people, and I want to lead these people out of slavery into the land that I've given them. I'm going to take them out from slavery, I'm going to give them freedom. For almost a year, the people of Israel have watched God do mighty miracles as plague after plague hits the people of the Egyptians, until Pharaoh says, okay, now go. And we meet the people of Israel running. They're finally free. They are on the banks of the Red Sea. And those of you who have watched Prince of Egypt or who have read the story, they're on the banks of the Red Sea. The Egyptians are coming. There's the sea over here. They're stuck in the middle. And at that point of time, they go into panic. They had said yes to God. They were full of enthusiasm. They were full of hope. We're finally free. But here, their no brain kicks in. Okay, so if Exodus 14 verse 10, I'll read it for you. So as Pharaoh approached, the Israelites looked up, and there were the Egyptians marching after them. They were terrified and they cried out to the Lord. They said to Moses, was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you brought us to the desert to die? What have you done to us by bringing us out of Egypt? Didn't we say to you in Egypt, leave us alone? Let us serve the Egyptians. It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than die in the desert. What is happening to their brain? No brain has kicked in. And no brain is ruled by fear. Okay? They feel stuck. They are out of their comfort zone, even though their comfort zone was a terrible place to be. It was still a place of familiarity. It's still a place they felt safe. Fear is a huge trigger for the no brain. Think of your own life. How differently you would parent if you parented without fear. Right? If there was no fear in your life, how differently would you do things? The fear of yourself as a parent, the fear of what your child will turn out to be, the fear of what other people will think of your parenting, and then the normal daily fears that come when you have a child. You've said yes to God and to yourself in this journey of motherhood, but fear seems to rule the day. I don't know about you, but I often say yes to God. I want my life to be a yes. I want my life to be a yes to God and to the things that God brings in my way. But what drives me more than often is my no brain. Because as I step into the yes, all my fears get in the way, right? The imposter syndrome kicks in. Who am I? What am I doing? What do I know? I shouldn't be doing this. Shame kicks in. I'm not enough. I don't have the resources to be a good mom. And now, now that I'm in the mother-in-law stage, I'm like, I don't have the resources to be a good mother-in-law. I don't even know how to do it. I don't have the resources to be the leader that I'm called to be. I don't, look at me. I can't handle this. Fear keeps me from seeing all of the possibilities, all of the opportunities. For the people of Israel, fear kept them from two things. It kept them from remembering who God was. God is their Redeemer, their Savior, the God who was with them and who had promised to rescue them. But it also kept them from remembering what God had done. But here's the very cool thing about the story. God's response to them is to call them from their no brain to their yes brain. He calls them to faith. And it's interesting, in that whole group, Moses is the only one who responds out of a yes brain response. He prays. He trusts God to work, and God does. God tells Moses to stretch out his hand, and the sea dries up, and the people of Israel are saved, while the Egyptians who follow them are destroyed. So fear drives the no brain. Another thing that drives the no brain is our needs when we are depleted. Okay, you all know the acronym of HALT, right? Yes?
Of what?
HALT? Let me stop here. So then, HALT, when you're hungry, when you're angry, when you're lonely, when you're tired, stop. Okay? Or HALT. Why stop? Because if you keep going, your no brain is going to kick in. But if you stop and take a break and you meet those needs, sometimes just a snack or a nap. You know that with your kids. You do it with your kids. You don't do it with yourselves, right? And allow your yes brain to kick in. Otherwise, we respond out of our no brain. Your own children, you can have the most docile, the most loving, the sweetest little kid. But when they're hungry or when they're like super tired, what happens to them?
Crazy.
They go crazy, right? And what we need is to rest. What we need is to attend to those physical needs. Let me give you another example from Exodus. The people of Israel, they've just celebrated the rescue, but there's a million people who have been rescued from Egypt, right? And they run out of food. And so in Exodus chapter 16, the whole community sets out from Elim and they come to the desert of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai. And in the desert, the whole community grumbled against Moses and Aaron. The Israelites said, if only we had died by the Lord's hand in Egypt. There we sat around pots of meat and ate all the food we wanted. But you brought us out into this desert to starve this entire assembly to death. What triggered this response? What triggered this no-brain response? Hunger, right? Their own needs, their physical needs. And so they went into grumbling, but this is how interestingly the no-brain acts, right? They went into grumbling, and very often when no-brain is what leads you, then you even look back on your story and rewrite your story with a no brain. Okay, so here the people of Israel, they were slaves. They were beaten. And yet they're rewriting their story and saying, in Egypt we sat around pots of meat and God has brought us out into this desert to die. Is there any resilience in the story so far? No, there's no resilience in the story. They're completely stuck in their little worry, anxiety, fear loop, right? Once more, Moses, and God took about 80 years to develop this in Moses, he's learned to engage his prefrontal cortex in these situations, and he prays. You can talk, you guys know how many times when you're in crisis mode, praying is the last thing you do. And then you're like, later on, you're like, shoot, I should have just sat down and prayed about this. And but praying is the last thing we do because our no brain kicks in faster than our yes brain. This is very cool because apparently when you encounter anything, any crisis, your brain, the stimulus goes right here to your hypothalamus. And your brain immediately sends two signals. One signal to the amygdala, which is around here, and one signal to your frontal lobe. But the signal to your amygdala goes faster than the signal to your prefrontal cortex. All right, and so it really is, you see that over here, they go boom. The no brain kicks in much faster than the yes brain. And instead of taking their needs to God, they grumble. They go into this cycle. And once more, God proves that his faithfulness and kindness to them is not dependent on their responses to him. He loves them as he loves us, and he provides manna and quail for the 1 million people every day for 40 years until he takes them to the land that he promised them. So fear and needs depletion can lead to no brain. But there's tons more that we could think, but I'm just going to do one more thing that can trigger the no brain. And that, I think, is so big in our culture especially, and I think it is a lack of control. When we feel like we're not in control, our no brain kicks in. I attack, or I withdraw, or I compromise, or very quickly go into the person that, very quickly let go of the person that I want to be and become someone that I regret, right? In Exodus chapter 32, here's one more incident from the people of Israel. Here they are under the shadow of Mount Sinai. Moses has gone up to get the 10 Commandments, and he's up there on the mountain. They're here at the bottom. They can see things happening on top of the mountain. They know God's doing something. But right down here, they're feeling not in control, okay? And so when they saw that Moses was so long in coming down from the mountain, they gathered around Moses' brother Aaron and said, make us gods who will go before us. As for this fellow Moses who brought us up out of Egypt, we don't know what happened to them. And so Aaron makes them give him all their gold, and he took what they handed him, and they made it into an idol cast in the shape of a calf, fashioning it with a tool, and then they said, these are your gods, Israel, who brought you out of Egypt. They very quickly went from giving up their identity as the children of God to taking back the identity of the gods in Egypt that kept them in slavery. Why? Because they thought those were familiar gods, we can control them. But did they? When we feel out of control, we don't really think things through. For the people of Israel, their triggers were fear, loss of control, but it went back further than that. 400 years of slavery had shaped their hearts and minds. Brutal oppression had so normalized their experience that they thought that it was better than freedom. We too so quickly settle into a comfort zone, functioning out of our no brain. As parents, it's so much easier to yell at that kid than to activate your frontal cortex, prefrontal cortex, and breathe, and then talk your kid through something, right? We think that it might be, for some of us, abuse, for some of us, oppression, those terribly dysfunctional situations. We normalize it, and because we feel like because it's familiar, it's under our control. But really, no, it's a God that rules over us. Remember, I told you how we had come here from India and how everything was so upside down for me. And I stayed in my no-brain mode for 3 years. okay? I was angry with my husband because it's his job that brought us here. I was irritated with my kids because now I'm stuck at home with these two little kids. I was angry with God because I had to give up my career and I was stuck. When I came here, I didn't know, I knew how to drive, but I didn't know how to drive on the right side of the road. And I didn't know how to drive in the snow. So I was stuck at home in the darkest months. Winter was long, it was hard. I felt like I was on a divine timeout. God has put me in my corner and said, stay there. And it was at this time I called up my dad, who was a very wise man, but not the most gentle. And I called him up and I was like, this is what is happening. And he said, Shantini, everyone God uses, he takes through a wilderness. Learn, don't miss the lessons of the wilderness. And I'm like, wilderness? This suddenly feels like a wilderness, right? Because I was like rumbling my way through it, just like the people of Israel. And so I actually went back and I wanted to learn the lessons of the wilderness. When fear and needs and feelings of not being in control kick in, then I watched the people of Israel learn what it means to turn to God. And there are 4 words. This whole thing of saying yes is being present, right? Being present to the situation, being present to yourself. What are you feeling and what is going on? When it's with your child, it's being present to what's going on behind the behavior. When it's with yourself, I just finished a parenting class with my prison men, and I found that more than them learning to parent their kids, it was them learning how to be a better parent, right? And as we as parents are present to ourselves and present to what is being triggered in us, then we begin to function out of the yes brain rather than the no brain. So Dr. Siegel uses 4 words that relate to this. And the words are 4 S words, and you probably, I'm just writing it up on top so you can see it. Safe, seen, soothe, as an old brain that forgets.
Secure.
And secure, yes, you know it is. This was the lesson that the people of Israel learned in the wilderness and that I had to learn too. As I looked through the book of Exodus, they were people who were in the wilderness for 40 years. The wilderness was never a safe place, but it was safe because they had a God who was with them, right? It was safe because they had a God who saw them. He didn't dismiss them, but he saw their problems and he validated them. He was a God who met their needs. He soothed them. And because of this, they were a secure people who could go on to conquer the promised land. You see it in our kids, so if you have a kid who, let's say, Tommy goes out and he falls down and skins his knee, okay? Or maybe Johnny in the playground pushes Tommy and Tommy skins his knee. He comes back home and he knows that he can come back home because his home is a safe environment for him. He's got a parent who cares for him, okay? He comes back home, his mom meets him at the door and says, Tommy, what happened to you? And he's like, I skinned my knee. And it's like, oh, how did that happen? And then he goes on to tell his mom how that happened, right? Johnny pushed me in the playground. So the mom doesn't say, oh, I'm gonna go kill that Johnny. Though you may feel like doing that, that would be no brain. But the mom is present. Mom takes a deep breath, is present to what's happening to Tommy, and she says, Tommy, that must have felt awful. You were pushed. It's a terrible feeling to feel pushed around. What happens to Tommy? Tommy feels seen. He has an experience, his mom sees it. She's not saying that's the right thing to do, but she's saying, I see you, I see your pain, and then she soothes it. So she's like, okay, now, come on in, sit down for a little bit, take a deep breath. Here, let's get a bandage, let's fix this. And she puts a bandage on, she gives him a glass of milk, says, so, do you want to watch a TV show? Do you want to just sit for a little bit? And Tommy says, no, I'll go out and play. He's able to go out into a dangerous environment because he is safe, he's seen, he's soothed, and he's secure. Okay, let's say that this turned out differently. Let's say the same scenario, but he's not in a safe environment. He comes back home, and the mom's like, busy, she's harried, she's like, what happened to you? Oh, Johnny pushed me in the playground. He's like, you need to be a man. You need to stand up for yourself. Go tell that Johnny he can't do these things. Or she's like, let's go talk to Johnny. And she grabs him and goes. She's totally responding out of no brain, right? And what happens to Tommy? Is he feeling seen? No, he's feeling more afraid because he doesn't know what's going to happen. He's not feeling soothed. He's feeling stirred up. He's feeling triggered. And he feels very insecure. He would rather sit at home and watch TV than go out and play in an environment where it feels dangerous, then he's not safe. Okay? For me, I had to learn that God is my safe place, whether I was here or whether I was in India. He sees me, he soothes me, and because of that, I can be secure and resilient. I jumped into this new life here. I embraced being a stay-at-home mom. I didn't do it. I mean, you oscillate a lot between yes brain and no brain, but it was growing. I volunteered all over the place. Every opportunity was endless. The minute I was able to say yes with joy, those opportunities seemed to be wonderful. I loved the time with my kids. I discipled them. I helped them to grow into the amazing people that they are today. But 2 years ago, the pandemic sent me reeling because all of a sudden now I was an empty nester. And I was in the space where I did not feel comfortable. So we prayed, and God opened up this new job. All of a sudden, all of the things that I laid down 30 years ago now became available to me, and I was asked to apply for a job and work as an assistant professor at Trinity. Okay, I work at the prison in Fox Lake. I help prisoners get their undergraduate degree. I jumped in with both feet and I said, yes, God. But very quickly the no brain kicked in. This is my problem. Because mostly I felt like I was not in control, out of my comfort zone, and I'm very, very afraid that I will fail. What were the triggers? They were the old familiar ones: fear, needs, lack of control over a new situation. What were my brain responses? I shut down. My anxiety started rising. I actually had rashes on my skin from feeling stressed and overwhelmed. The yes brain responses needed to be engaged. I needed to stop, take a deep breath. I needed to take it to God in prayer. I needed to talk to wise friends who could see and soothe and remind me to stay grounded in God and what God was doing. Gratitude, I needed to learn to say thank you. You know, gratitude was a big part of getting back to the yes brain. I still oscillate, and we all will do. But as you engage your yes brain strategies, you will grow in wholeness and in all that God has created you to do and be. Okay? Dr. Speaker actually has what they call a refrigerator page. So if you just Google yes brain refrigerator sheet, you can find it and you can stick it on your thing, and there are some yes brain strategies and no brain things to avoid that you can find there. Okay, can I pray for you? Father God, thank you that you are a God who is our safe place. That you are a God who sees us. You are a God who knows our pain. You took it on Calvary. And Lord, we know that you're a God who continually surrounds us with your love and reminds us that we can be secure people because of who you are. And so I pray for each mom here, wherever their story is, whatever the stage in life they are in, that Father, each one would know a little bit more about themselves, a little bit more about you. And then as we grow in being these authentic people that you have called us to be, you would be honored and glorified in our lives. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.